right. So, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. Been doing anything fun this summer?
Well, we went down to Florida for a week. That was fun.
Yeah, I got 2 kids that live in Florida. Where'd you go? Did you go anywhere near Boca Raton? Fort Lauderdale?
Not really. We went to Fort Myers.
Not sure where that is, but it's not down near Miami.
No, it's up past Orlando.
Oh, up north of Orlando. Did you go to Orlando?
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
There's no way to go to Orlando and not have fun. They got more things to do there than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Okay, and you got like a month before school starts? When do you go back?
The 18th.
Of August?
Yeah.
You're going to be a junior?
Yep.
And you're going to be taking pre-calc trig?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And you'll also be taking your ACT test in the fall sometime, I'm sure.
Pre-ACT is in the fall.
Well, okay, doesn't really matter, but usually juniors take some form of it in the fall and then take another form of it in the spring, maybe the full ACT test. And then you get one final chance when you're a senior in the fall to take it.
Yeah.
But it's an extremely important test.
Yeah.
You could almost trade, I'm not saying which is going to be more important to college, but I'm guessing the ACT test is more important than your grade point average.
Yeah.
That's how important it is. I might be wrong, but I know that when I went to school, they put so much importance on those. I never took the ACT, but I took the SAT to go to Mines. Mines didn't require the ACT. But do you know where you're going? Do you have any idea where you want to go to college yet?
No. I was thinking of just doing UCD for the first year.
Uh-huh. Okay. You don't know what you want to study yet?
CSI.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Criminal, okay. Well, you're going to need some math for that.
Yeah.
You're definitely going to have to do pre-calc, trig, and eventually calc. All right. I have us, the last time we worked on ACT stuff, which we've done a few times, I had us doing problem 31. Let's pick up and make sure you remember how to add and subtract fractions. What do I have to do to complete this operation? No? Let's go back a step. How do I do that?
Find the common denominator.
Aha! What's the least common denominator?
6.
You get that by... Let's talk about least common denominator. Sometimes you get the common denominator by just multiplying the two denominators together. So 6 I know is going to be a common denominator. It also happens to be the least common denominator in this case. They're not always the same thing, but in this case they are. What's this numerator here?
2.
Over here?
3.
All right. Now, let's go back to the problem we had. what is the common denominator? Or you could even say the least common denominator.
4x.
What's this numerator?
4.
This numerator?
3x.
What's the answer? In other words, how do you now, once you've found a common denominator, how do you do it? Just operate on the numerator only and use your common denominator. So it's 4 minus 3x all over 4x.
So E.
Uh-huh. Parallel lines and transversals. A subject that you can't know too good, because there's going to be at least 4 or 5 questions on the ACT test that are regarding parallel lines and transversals.
J.
Good. Always amazes me that I didn't. There are 4 trig questions on the ACT, and you haven't had trig yet. So, I'll just tell you quickly. If you have something that is in radians, to convert it to degrees, you're either going to use pi radians per 180 degrees or 180 degrees per pi radians. In other words, this is the conversion factor. Well, which one would I use here?
The top.
No, the bottom. The reason I want to use the bottom one is because I want to lose the radians and gain degrees. So if I multiply it by the bottom, the radians cancel, and you are left with degrees. So if I was converting degrees to radians, I would use the top one, because then the degrees would cancel and I would end up with radians. So to figure out which one to use, just use that rule. Okay, so when I multiply this, the radians cancel, the pi cancels, and I end up with 4.25 times 180. What's the answer?
765.
Yeah. Without even doing the math. And that's another thing about the ACT, is that they tend to put answers that are very, very far apart. In other words, they didn't put 765 and 775 down there. They put 765 and the next closest thing was 945. Well, we can do you don't really need a calculator here. I know you're allowed to use one, but multiplying that times 180, if you just do that part, you get 72 and change. Well, there's the change, 765 instead of 720. And so I would say that there are very, very few questions where the calculator really is going to be needed. You could go into this thing without a calculator and do just fine on it. Now, obviously, there's 2 or 3 questions where it would be useful, and so you don't want to do that, but don't think the calculator is going to be a big help. There's a lot of questions where it almost leads you astray. which of those 5 points, A, B, C, D, or E, are closest to 1 3/4?
E.
The next page. This is actually supposed to be in the hard part of the test also, which I didn't really want to start up with. I wanted to start, a little bit of an easier selection, but so far you're doing fine. Just because it's questions greater than 30 doesn't necessarily mean that they're hard. Okay, I'm going to draw this triangle. I know it's isosceles because there's 2 sides that are equal. What kind of degree measurement are we looking at? Is this a right angle, is the question. You know that this angle is the same as that angle automatically, regardless of whether this is a right angle or not. These two have to be the same because their opposite sides are the same. Whenever you have an isosceles triangle, it's not just 2 equal sides, but it's 2 equal angles also. So, of all of these answers, every one of them has a 90-degree angle in it. So it's pretty safe to assume that that has to be 90 right there, right? In other words, there's no answer that doesn't show a 90-degree angle. So if this is 90 and that one's equal to that one, what must these be?
45.
Okay, so it's D. It's a 90, 45, 45. Some of them has to be 180. What do we have to do before we can find the median of the data?
Order them numerically.
Tell me what that is, starting after 9.
13, 13, 20, 22, 27, 31.
What's the median of that?
20.
Yes, median means middle. What would the mean be? Don't give me a number, but how would you find the mean?
Add them all together and divide by 7.
And how about the mode?
13.
Good. You know your statistics. All right, now this problem is a little tricky to understand. And understand that they try to do that on purpose. Their goal is to kind of confuse you, make you think about these kind of things. First of all, what this means, this first sentence, is P is a positive integer that divides into both 45 and 60. In other words, something like 3 would divide into 45 evenly and 60 evenly. So that's what that means. P is some number that divides into 45 and 60. But does not divide into 9 nor 10. So it's not 3. It's not 5. Because 5 would be another number that divides into 45 and 60. But can't be 5, can't be 3. They're asking you for what is P, and then once you figure out what P is, add the digits together. Well, that's a huge clue. How many digits do you suppose there are in P? Yeah, if it was one digit, they wouldn't be asking us to add the digits together. So we're looking for numbers greater than 10. Well, what number greater than 10 divides both into 45 and 60?
15.
What do 15 digits add to?
6.
That's answer D. This is one of the tougher problems, I think, only because of their wording. In other words, if they would have stuck the word into right there, it wouldn't have been nearly as tough. It's just difficult to figure out what they're talking about. Okay. What's the slope of that line right there?
1.
Slope of 1 is there. Remember, slope is rise over run. To get a 45-degree angle, you got to go up 1 and over 1. So that would be a slope of 1.
Okay, so, the undefined.
Which also means infinite. In other words, let's examine slopes. Okay, that's a slope of 1. A slope of 2 would be something like that, maybe. A slope of 10 would be something like that. Well, notice that as I get closer and closer to straight up and down, it gets bigger and bigger. In fact, if I have that slope there, that might be 1,000. And when you eventually reach straight up and down, you are at infinity. Rise over run, well, the rise is any number you want, and the run is 0. So when you divide by 0, you get infinity. And they don't like to use the word infinity, they like to use the word undefined. They're not exactly the same, but at this level of math, they prefer the word undefined. One other thing, let me say about this problem, is whenever this is a possible answer, never pick it.
Okay.
Cannot be determined. I have yet to see, I've looked at probably 12 different practice tests on ACT, and I have never ever seen a problem whose answer was, it cannot be determined from the given information. Seen other type tests that might have that as an answer, but not the ACT. So if you're guessing, let's talk about that for a second, because you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're going to guess occasionally. Well, if you don't have a clue and you guess, you always want to guess, incidentally. You never want to not put down anything, because you're giving up nothing, and there's a possibility of 1 out of 5 that your guess will be correct. So if you're guessing on a problem like this, your odds are 1 out of 4, because you're never going to guess K. Okay? What's this slope? Zero. Horizontal line is 0, a vertical line is infinity or undefined. That didn't have anything to do with this problem, but
it'd be
well, let's draw it. Sometimes it can help to draw it. It's perpendicular to the y-axis. So, must be, if I was perpendicular to the y-axis, I would have to be like that. And this point is 5 comma minus 3. So there's the point. I should have plotted the point first and then drawn my perpendicular line. What's the equation of that line? What's its y-intercept?
-3.
Which of those equations matches that?
C.
Yes. In other words, no matter what x is, y is -3. Anywhere on this line, x could be 10, y is still going to be -3. X could be 0, y is still going to be -3. So the only thing we need to define that line is y equals -3. We don't need any amount of x. Same way that a vertical line that went through that exact same point, what would the equation of that be?
X equals 5.
You got it. I'll try not to go over here, Mitch, but sometimes I lose track of time. So if I'm going over, feel free to stop me and say time's up. I said there's 4 trig questions on there, and there are, and it's not like we're going to be able to ignore them. So I'm going to need, you've had some trig. I know you had some trig last year.
Yeah.
You probably even had a little trig in geometry. So you don't need to know a lot of trig. You don't need to have taken your trig course before taking this test. What you need to know are the following. We'll start with that. When you take a trig function, you're taking it of an angle. What is the sine of theta? Forget the problem for a moment. What is the sine of theta equal to?
3/5.
What's the cosine of theta equal to?
4/5.
What's the tangent of theta?
3/4.
Now, in this problem, it tells you the tangent is 3/4. So, the way I would solve it, in other words, this is a very typical problem where they give you one trig function and they ask you, well, what's the other trig function? Well, by telling us that if I always start this problem by drawing a triangle, a right triangle, and labeling theta, and they are telling me that the tangent of theta is 3/4, that allows me to dimension that and that. Now is all I have to do is figure out what the third dimension is. What's the hypotenuse if that's 3 and that's 4?
5.
Now what's the sine of theta?
3/5.
That's all that problem is. In other words, the trig you need to know is very, very basic trig. It's not complicated trig that you have to have taken a trig course to answer. So I'll be able to teach you all the trig you need to know for this test. Okay? I'll make a note that we left off at question 40, and we can get on it. Do you know what your mom got planned? A half hour twice a week?
I think she just wants me to start just with a half hour a week, and then once school comes around.
Well, here's the problem. My prices are actually different during the summer than they are in the winter. And the deal that I sent her an email on is you can get 4 hours of tutoring in the summer for $80. So if you can somehow work 4 hours in between now and September 1st, that'll satisfy. You got 6 weeks. There's 6 weeks between now and September 1st. Okay, so yeah, we might need to take a couple of weeks and do 2 half hours. Okay, so think about it. Is this a good time? Do you want this time every Wednesday?
Yeah.
All right, let me make a note of that. Make this a recurring appointment. Hold on. What the heck did I do? Oh, well, anyway, I'll get that taken care of. Yeah, you're down there for Wednesdays. I will talk to you next Wednesday at 4. All right, Mitch. Bye-bye.